Hellboy always works alone, except with Abe Sapien and
Mhm.
Selma Blair
And
and
Myers, his
Myers,
dad,
his dad,
that whole
all the
that whole
other
thread.
agents that we constantly see.
Clay,
Yup.
the Russian
Clay.
team,
Yeah, exactly. But
that
he
dead
always works alone.
that dead guy that tells him where Rasputin is, that he brings back to life.
Invisible Woman from the Fantastic Four is there.
I finally watched. I finally watched.
I
Finally
watched. I
finally
watched.
I finally watched.
Hey guys, I'm Milan, and welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched.
And this is David, and today I finally watched Hellboy.
And today we have a special guest, Matthew Dawson. Hi, Matthew.
Hey guys, I'm Matthew Dawson, and I have seen Hellboy.
So, Matthew, it's actually an interesting reason why we have you on as a guest, not just because you make an awesome guest and you have your own podcast, but you also recently produced, edited, and put out a awesome audio drama.
Yes, I did. Justice League Mortal, the canceled George Miller film from the late 2000s. I took the script and adapted it, rearranged it, made it fit into an audio drama format, casted it. We got our Justice League. Alon plays the villain, Maxwell Lord. He is fantastic. So fans of this show should definitely check it out if you want to hear Alon be evil than normal. It's just a really interesting study to me, seeing a movie that never came out get its fruition, because I think especially at this point in time where we are with like superhero movies and the genre in DC, it's interesting to see kind of an alternate universe where this would have came out, and how, like, this, I believe it would have came out in 2009 and it would have beat like the Avengers by 3 years. And it's like, man, if this came out and this started a DC universe, how different would it be? So I wanted to make it, and it was kind of an experiment to see if people would love it or hate it. And I'm pleased to say that a lot of people love it.
Yeah, no, I mean, so when I first saw your audition ad on Twitter about it, I was like, okay, I have to. I'm a huge DC fan. I was like, I have to try out. But then I was like, before I send in my audition, I'm gonna like do a little bit of research on it, and the leaps and bounds that this film took to just never get made is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And then to think like George Miller, like Mad Max George Miller, to do this, and then reading like not only the script from I guess like the production script, but like drafts before it became finalized, the things that they were hoping to get away with kind of amazes me. I was like, it's like some of it would have been like, oh, really cool, and then some of it would have just ruined certain superheroes for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are a few different versions of the script. There's one with like a whole scene on Wonder Woman's island, Themyscira, and stuff, but the one I took is kind of the most prevalent one, I'd say. And there are a lot of scenes where there's one scene where like Superman's talking to Batman and he's like, where's this thing? And Batman goes, I don't know. And then Superman just goes like, tell me. And Batman goes, I don't know. And he just like, that's the kind of back and forth for a while. And I'm like, they weren't done with this. Like that, there's supposed to be more there. And they were like, we'll do it later. But that's also kind of the interesting thing about it, because I think it works still.
So I am curious on how much is it, like when you found the script, how much is it you and how much is the script?
The only things that I change nothing story-wise. The only thing I would change is formatting. Like, as you know, you've seen the script before. It says like interior, Batcave, night. I changed it to have the narrator say, "Back in the Batcave." That's basically
right.
all I touch. I had to retype the entire thing, which took way too long. Not fun process. But
I've been there.
and I wrote a post-credit scene. That is the only scene in the entire thing that I wrote and directed and everything myself.
And it was a great post-credit scene.
Thanks.
And we won't give any spoilers about what it was or anything.
No, but listen.
But listen, no, but I'm sure, I mean, you know, listening to it, it just sounds like you put a lot of work into it. And for people who are fans of DC and audio dramas, this is like really, it's just really cool just to listen to like your favorite heroes in this like environment that you never heard them in before. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
So before we absolutely bore David to tears, look at him in there in the corner.
If you just sent me the link like I asked.
We'll talk about Hellboy now. And I think Hellboy is kind of like the perfect thing to talk about with you in intro and then kind of promoting Justice League Mortal, because not only are both like comic book graphic novel ish, you know, sort of things, adaptations, but it has kind of a same tone too.
Like that 2000s superhero tone before the MC takeover, you know?
Well, because when I was listening to Mortal, I wasn't really imagining a live action version in my head. I was imagining like the Justice League animated version.
Oh, interesting.
In my head. That's how I listened to it and kind of processed it. And, you know, Hellboy, say what you will, but it comes off very cartoonish, which I'm glad, because if it came off like it took itself seriously, but it knows what it was. You know what I mean? And I felt like the tones were the same there too. So yeah, David, what did you think? What was your overall like thing the first time watching it?
I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I'd watched it when it came out. I have like this movie is definitely like a made in the early 2000s movie, but like having said that, I did, as it was going on, enjoy it more and more. You know, and then the ending happened, which I want to talk about when we get to, but like overall, like I liked it. I liked it probably about what I thought I would. I just think like, and we're going to start getting into it, but I think like story-wise, a lot of it felt like stretched out more. Like the story is actually fairly compact, right? Like we have a prologue. Hellboy has a relationship with this woman. He like gets her out of the psych ward. Rasputin comes back. Rasputin tricks him into going to Russia. The ending. You know what I mean? Like there's like, it's a very compact story, but somehow it's stretched into a 2-hour movie. And I think it either needed to complicate the story a little bit more, add a little bit more to it, and I can talk about that going as we go through, or just make it like a 90-hour and 40-minute movie. But having said all that, like I did like it. Ron Perlman is obviously great in his role, but it's just such an early 2000s movie. Like the feel of it is like so distinct with all like the other, you know, movies we've done from that era.
Do you agree with that, Matthew?
The only thing I would disagree with is the decision that you want to complicate the story more, because this movie opens with Nazis summoning a portal to hell from space to bring out a little red monkey, and but I think it also demonstrates. Yeah, that's never been done before in every movie ever. Am I right? But then I think it also demonstrates Guillermo del Toro's strengths in that he can have a scene like that, but then also have a scene where Hellboy is on this rooftop kind of like jealously stalking a date of his, you know, but it humanizes everything. I think that's, as a director, his biggest strength is taking the outlandish, the outworldly, and bringing it down to earth. So I personally don't have a problem with the runtime. I like simplicity, dumb movies, but I don't even think this is that, you know?
Well, I guess
I
the point I was making is like we don't,
Mhm.
we don't even see Ron Perlman until like 25 minutes into the movie. So the Nazi
It's a
prologue,
long intro. Hmm.
it's just it continues to go, and that's like I don't know. As I said, if I had watched it when it came out, I may have enjoyed it more. But it's like going into it now with all my like knowing about the movie, and I've known about this movie for 20 years almost at this point, right? And so it's like I've seen clips and things in this. I'm like, when the fuck does Ron Perlman get into this movie? Like, when are we going to see him?
What are you talking about? He showed up 5 minutes in as the little baby. Come on.
Yeah, you
That
bet
was
it's a
not-
little baby too.
That was not 5 minutes in.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So, I mean, I enjoyed this movie a lot when it first came out. When I first saw it, I was like, this movie rocks. And then watching it again as I've become older and matured, the faults of this movie are quite apparent, especially in like the saturated market of so many superhero comic book movies that we have now. But the thing that bothered me the most in this entire film is fucking John Myers. I was like, this white bread motherfucker is so bland and boring. And I just was like, is he really the focus? Like, why is he the focus? I did not like his character.
I think he's meant to be the everyman kind of guy. He's like the audience
I understand
placeholder.
that, Matthew.
Yeah,
I understand that, but like a
I
slice
get what
of
you're
bread
saying.
has more
Yeah.
has more character oomph than that dude.
His purpose in the story is to be yelled at by Hellboy. That's why he's there.
I just wish and David and I talked about this, and David makes a good point about like, have we ever seen that actor in anything else afterwards? And the answer is no.
No.
And I don't think he's a bad actor. It's just he was not given a lot to do in this. And then the stuff that he has to do, he's just not like a likable character. It would be fun if it was like, oh, we were worried for him and Hellboy has to save him, and but I was just like looking at Selma Blair this entire time, and I was like, if you don't go for the big red dude, then there's something wrong with you. You should go back to the psych ward if you settle with John Myers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I think if John Myers had been played by someone you recognized, you would have been like, oh shit, it's that guy. You know what I mean? But you didn't know who this was, and you were just like, I hate his character.
Well,
Who would make a better John, or who should replace? I can't remember the character's name. That's how bad it is. But
well, no, it was Jonathan Myers is the character's name. There's no
John
way
Myers,
Lon-
that's right. Rupert Evans.
that's how
plays
much
him.
that's how
right.
much you don't know him.
Yeah, I didn't know. Was his name or the character's name? No, but who would make a better John Myers? You cast anyone. Who's making it interesting?
Well, Rupert Evans was what, 24? He was at like 28. So it's someone who was like 28 at around that time.
I say Sebastian Stan.
Was he even? I had never seen him at that point in my life.
Interesting.
I don't know. I feel like he has like some charming aspects to him that
Mhm.
that you could like follow along. I mean, I don't want to say Keanu Reeves, but Keanu Reeves.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
I do also want to say that Rupert Evans has acted quite a bit since then. Nothing I've seen. It looks like he might be British.
Oh,
Seeing a lot of.
He is a British guy. Yeah, he's a British actor. Look at that.
Well, so that accent was good, right? I did not know. I would never have
No?
guessed.
Yeah.
I'm gonna replace him with Michael Cera. I want to see him deliver like Hellboy a bunch of pancakes and stuff. I think that'd make this movie a lot better.
You want to see Michael Cera fake yawn and put his arm around
Yeah.
Selma Blair?
I'm pretty sure that's the plot of Scott Pilgrim versus the World already. So we're halfway there.
We're halfway there. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, and I think David has a good point in thinking like maybe the reason I don't like this character is because we spend so much time on John before we even see Hellboy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then all the scenes that Hellboy is just kicking demon ass is awesome. I love it. I have no problem with that.
I was disagreeing with you at first about like when you said like it takes 25 minutes to get to Hellboy, and I'm like, that's not right, is it? And then I look back and I'm like, yeah, because it has that like it's a long prologue, that Nazi stuff, and then you introduce white bread, and then Hellboy shows up. And it's nearly half an hour into, that's like almost a fourth of the way through the movie that the title character shows up.
By the way, here are the people born the same year as Rupert Evans that may have taken this part.
Oh,
Colin
here
Farrell,
we go.
Ryan Reynolds, Benedict.
Oh.
Ryan Reynolds would have been good. Benedict
I think that would have been
Cumberbatch, Alexander Skarsgård, Cillian Murphy, John Bernthal. Yeah. So I think Sean William Scott. Actually, Sean William Scott would have been
Sean
perfect.
William Scott would have been awesome in this. He would have. No, but I think that just proves the point that any of those guys that you just named could just replace.
Well,
Rupert
yeah, and
Evans.
it's not the actor's fault, right? It is sort of a nothing part. He's brought in as like the guy that's supposed to take over John Hurt's position as like the father figure, and it's just like
Right.
what information have we been given that's like, I don't know, it's just he's not really given a whole lot to do.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
But so I never saw the new Hellboy. I think, when did that come out? 2017. And so
2019.
Yeah, I want to say 2019.
2019.
So
So
I might be wrong.
No, I think you're right. 2019. So after I finished this movie, since I was already on HBO Max, I decided to take the L and to watch it. And I was like, comparingly, this is like Spielberg. Okay. Like comparingly, I'm like watching this and the new one, and I'm just like, wow, I didn't know hot garbage could be so hot and could be so garbage. And so a lot to what you were saying, David, is that the Nazi part in the new one is very short, is narrated, and it gets to the main character Hellboy very quickly. But one interesting part of that is that you have the intro to the villain in the beginning of this movie, not the hero,
Mhm.
right? Not Hellboy. You have the intro to the villain. And then about maybe 25 minutes later, you have another flashback, and that is the Nazi stuff with the intro to Hellboy. And they're so close together, and in that 25-minute gap or that 20-minute gap, you have absolute like CGI crap fest. I don't understand how that movie got made, and I'll leave it at that.
You know, you can kick me off the podcast right now, but that movie, guilty pleasure of mine.
Oh,
It's bad, but I'd watch it again.
uh,
well, now I have to
It's
watch
awful, though. But it's fun, awful to me.
well, yeah, David has to watch it. Watch it on your own time. We're not making an episode about it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
please don't.
We can. One thing. So I guess we can, dividing this movie up. Let's talk about the Nazi part in the beginning. And one thing, so a little bit of like the process of this is I'll just like take notes, and kind of sometimes pretty detailed notes about like, not that I'm going to talk about everything, but just in case Alon will just ask me a question and I'll just happen to have it written down. But when they start going through the mythology and like the 7 gods of chaos, and that's the one thing I wrote down. I didn't really, all the rest of it was like, none of this matters, right? This is just like paranormal shit is going to happen in the movie. And here's a bunch of words to like, this is
And then
our
something
version
with-
of that.
Something with Cthulhu, maybe. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
He does
there's a lot
show
of
up in the end.
tentacles. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, we got Rasputin who shows up, which I was like, oh, that's kind of, like a real world tie-in, something we all like know. I do really love the actor who plays Rasputin. He plays a lot of like Russian bad guy, Eastern European bad guy parts that I've seen him in. So, and I also really appreciated the robot with knife hands,
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I was a big fan of Knife Hand
he
Robot.
legitimately scared me as a kid watching this.
Well, because he
That's-
doesn't
I
seem
don't
like he's
blame
able
you.
to die.
Yeah.
That
when did this come out? In
autopsy
2000...
scene where he just like sits up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Scary
and
dude.
like Guillermo del Toro's kind of the perfect director for this, because Hellboy, the way they did the makeup on Ron Perlman, I was gonna make a joke saying, "Oh, for this movie, Ron Perlman had to take off all his makeup finally." But the thanks, David. But the makeup for this is so cool. It is so amazingly done, especially Abe Sapien is so well done. Of course, Guillermo del Toro did Shape of Water later on, and
It's the same.
that
It's
character
the same costume.
same costume, right? It's not,
Just
but
brought it out storage.
That
Yeah,
dude
I get-
eventually gets caught. Abe gets caught by Michael Shannon, and he fucks that lady who cleans his tank. Like that is what happens.
I think it's before. I think Shape of Water is Abe's backstory, and then Hellboy is afterwards.
You know what? Yeah,
It's a
that's right. Yeah.
prequel.
Chronologically, you are probably right. Someone needs to ask Del Toro.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
But,
I like that theory.
The makeup for the knife hands once the doctor takes all the crap off, like all the dominatrix leather off
the
of his
bondage
face.
suit.
How he like doesn't have eyelids and he cut off his lips. That is so grotesque. I was 12
Mhm.
years old when this movie came out. Nightmares, just nightmares.
It kind of
Yeah.
reminded me of Event Horizon, like the how
Yeah.
disgusting like the parts of that we saw when we talked about that one.
Mhm.
Well, actually,
Oh.
another part of Event Horizon that it reminded me of was when that light in the beginning gets sucked into that portal and we're in space and there's like a giant frozen creature. I was like, this is the other side of that Event Horizon portal.
Mm.
What also
The,
reminded me of
yep.
Avengers.
Oh,
Yeah,
Sky
the first-
portals, man.
Yeah, the first Avengers, and even when you go through it, it looked like kind of the similar things, like these, like the beasts that were coming in. And I was like, that's it very much looks like
the
Avengers.
Chitauri.
The Chitauri, the Cthulhu Chitauri.
Cthulhu
There's a
Chitauri.
joke there somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. We're not making it today.
No, someone will figure it out for us. Comment, tag me on Twitter if you figure out the Cthulhu Chitauri joke. I can't make.
And if you can do a tie into Event Horizon, extra bonus points for
And
you.
yeah, extra point for Event Horizon reference. There we go.
I also, getting back to it, really loved Baby Hellboy, which we talked about a little bit earlier. But I liked very cute, and then also loved the picture of him with everyone there, like the old army photo. Like that part was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and how everyone just like, hey, this is a demon from hell, but we're adopting him, and we're all
Yeah.
gonna be okay with it.
Yep.
Yeah,
They got on
It's
board
the
and-
very
40s.
quickly.
kind of like you look at this 2004 CGI, and it's not great, but it's good for the time. I thought, right, and you just excuse it in your head, being like, yeah, it's not that bad.
I agree. You then realize that this was like a 25-minute cold open because you then get the Hellboy title sequence and like the montage of like he keeps escaping, people keep seeing him, the FBI keeps denying it, and now we're in the present day.
I really like that.
I have to say-
I like when
I
comic
like that
book
too.
movies have the comics as like canon. Like when Logan did that, when he's like, why they're making comics about me and the X-Men, and that's all bullshit. I like that they have that similar thing with Hellboy here, how it shows that there are like Hellboy comics, and he's kind of like this world's Bigfoot in a way. It's like
Yeah.
a crappy cell phone quality photo of him and all that. I just like
Well,
that when movies do that.
Some of my favorite parts in this movie is with Jeffrey Tambor, who plays Tom Manning. He's like the PR rep for like the paranormal sector, right? And he goes on late night shows, and like the stuff he's like, why is Hellboy's footage always blurry? Answer me
Yeah.
that, Jimmy. You know, like, and then he's just like, and then once, David, I think you said that John is kind of supposed to be the replacement for Professor Broom, but towards the end of the movie, Manning kind of falls into the fatherly role for Hellboy.
Manning does such an about face as a character in like 30 seconds that it's like shocking.
Yeah. They beat Bondage Zombie and they're like, all right, we're cool, I guess. Like
Let me show
30
you how to-
seconds before that, they were fighting.
There's
He
a
got-
scene.
He got
There's
that
a
other guy killed.
he did. There's a scene in this movie that has stuck in my brain for the 18 years it's been out, or 19
Oh
years
man.
it's been out. And the scene, it's like rent free in my head. It's the scene where Manning stops Hellboy from lighting the cigar with the lighter, and he goes, "No, no, no, matches. It like preserves the taste." And so
Mhm.
when I first smoked my first cigar, I used matches because I remember Manning saying that
Because
to
of
Hellboy.
Hellboy.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I'm a big cigar guy, and every time I light one, yeah, I'm the same way. I think the exact same. It preserves the flavor. So good.
What I like next in the movie is that we see Rasputin die, and then present day, it's like, oh, Rasputin's back. We brought him back very quickly.
Yeah.
And then the next big set piece we get, and this is like such like an early 2000s way of doing things, is like we just get kind of like a big monster scene in the beginning to like kind of set it up. You know what I mean? Like to show what Hellboy does, right? Like, oh, Tom Manning goes on TV and he's like, this isn't real, this is all fake. And then we go to the Bureau of Paranormal, development or whatever, research and development. And the next thing is he's got to go on a mission. And this mission does turn out to be like the basis for the rest of the movie. But when you first watch it, you're like, oh, this just seems to be like a one-off. And then they kind of do a great job of connecting it. But it is just like this big set piece in this museum, which is like entertaining to watch. And that like the fighting is good. Although the use of ropes when Samuel hits Hellboy, he just keeps flying through things over and over again in a way that defies physics is funny.
He hit him
Yeah.
with his big hand.
Samuel,
It's the big hand.
I like how they call him Red throughout. I like that. I like
Mhm.
that instead of just saying Hellboy each time.
Yeah, and about that first action scene, I like that as well too. That because I had the exact same thought of like, I like that this is like kind of the introduction of like, here's what Hellboy can do. He's got the big gun, he's got the big hand, but also that monster is the kind of basis, the Hydra that keeps coming back type of thing throughout the movie.
Yeah.
It's not a one-off scene, because I think at this point, now that I'm realizing how late in the movie this happened, it's still in like the first hour, but it's like you don't really have time for that at this point, to have that early action, unconsequential action sequence.
Well,
you got to get into it.
Right.
That's true, but here's an idea: is maybe start the movie off with a non-important scene that has Hellboy in it to establish the paranormal and him and like the relationship that they all have. I mean, I like the way they did it, because then how else are you going to have like Tom Manning being the PR guy and being like that classic comedic timing where he's, there's no such thing as the paranormal FBI sector. Cut to the headquarters for the paranormal FBI sector, right?
Yep.
But
Smash
then
cut.
again, if you think about how long the scene is too, it starts in the museum, but doesn't it go in like a train station and then the sewer and then like it continues? Like, man, this Hellboy's fighting this thing across town,
I did like the when we were introduced to Myers right before that scene, though. He's like, and Hitler died in 1958, and Myers is like, you mean 1945? And he's like, oh, is that what you believe?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Well, and so Hellboy meets Myers right before he goes to the museum, and he's like, I don't fucking need this guy. Like, and he's kind of in a fight with his dad at the time, and we come to find out that John Hurt's dying. And Hellboy does all this on his own, and so he gets his ass kicked by Samuel. Samuel escapes, and then Myers tries to follow him to help, and Myers immediately is like about to die, not from a monster, but he gets hit by a car.
Yeah, I love that.
Right.
Yeah, what's he say, Hellboy? Red means stop, and he just chucks that car and stops it. I love those classic one-liners. And, between this and Spider-Man 2, 2004 superhero movies were having a hell of a year with trains. I think they both have great train scenes,
That's true. Well, this one goes back to that well a couple times, right? Because he eventually kills one of the Samuel with the like they're in that train station for like 15 fucking minutes.
Dude,
Did
when he gets
The
under the
Incredibles
train.
come out this year too? Because The Incredibles came out this year too. They had another train scene. He stops train at the beginning.
Wow.
Big
We gotta
fucking train year.
draw up the conspiracy chart, like in Always Sunny with like
Yeah.
Charlie Day. He's
They're
like,
all
there's something
connected.
there. They're all connected. Yeah. I love the use of Hellboy's horns, and it's just like it's like a thing he does, right? It's like first you're like, don't stare at his horns. He shaves them down to try to fit in. Good luck with that, right? And then they grow out at the end, kind of like fulfilling his purpose, right? But his horns are used at this part where he is under the train, and I like the random passenger who hits him. He's like, I'm on your side. He's like, as if, buddy.
I love that.
And then he hits him under the train, and then his nub horns are gliding across the bottom of the train. So when they come out, they're glowing hot. I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. And the fact that he files them down and all that, and you see like he has like a metal grinder. He's just like casually filing down his horns.
What's funny
He
too
wants
is
to look like us.
he wanted to get on that subway, and they hit him off, and it so happened that the monster had jumped off too. Like if he had gotten on there, the monster would have just gotten away.
Just left. Yeah.
That's true too. That's true.
That's true.
So then we come to like the Selma Blair part of the movie.
Correct. She's in a psych hospital. And he goes to talk with her, and basically we just kind of get this is one thing where I'm like, cut out 10 minutes of Nazis and have a Selma Blair Hellboy scene in the beginning where she can't control her stuff, because clearly she was a part of this team fighting bad guys, right? Even though they say Hellboy always works alone, but we have like no real like in our heads, we don't know why. We haven't seen why she had to go to this psych hospital by herself.
Hellboy always works alone, except with Abe Sapien and Selma Blair and
Myers, his
Myers,
dad,
his dad,
that whole
all the
that
other
whole red.
agents that we constantly see.
Clay,
Yeah,
the Russian
Clay.
team,
yeah, exactly. But
that
he
dead-
always works alone.
that dead guy that tells him where Rasputin is, that he brings back to life.
Invisible Woman from the Fantastic Four is there.
Yeah, the whole time, Jessica Alba.
The whole time, very good performance.
The other thing that's happening at this same time as he's talking to Selma Blair is Broom comes to the museum, or maybe he was already there, right? And then Abe is touching everything, and he's like, oh, let's have a full flashback to show you that Rasputin caused all of this, when we already know Rasputin caused all this.
Yeah. We have to see more of the Nazi woman.
Ilsa.
What's her face? Ilsa, played by Bridget Hodson. Yeah, she's
My lawyer is telling me to decline to comment on the Nazi woman. I have nothing to say, positive nor negative. She's a Nazi. I'll leave it at that.
Her name is Biddy Hodson. I thought you said Bridget Hodson, like hot. I was like, that's a name. That's a choice.
Hodson.
It is Bridget. It's Bridget Hodson.
Oh, when I'm looking at as Bridget Hodson, but yeah, she now goes by Biddy.
Oh, I see that
Biddy.
now too.
Yeah,
Biddy.
I like it.
Yeah.
Bridget Hodson.
And then
She's hot.
The next part of this, you're not allowed to call the Nazi woman hot, but then the
Oh.
next part of this, we get that this fucking Samuel thing has laid eggs and he can't die, and so like they imply that he's a Hydra, but we don't like they like more and more imply that he's a Hydra as we go along. But and then at the same time, Rasputin visits Selma at the hospital, and I have no idea what this actually leads to. All it does is she blows up the hospital, but I thought like he like entranced her so that she was gonna go like do something that would cause Hellboy to do something that would hurt him. Like, you know what I mean? Like
I that's not when I thought of it. I thought of it later on where he has her like naked under the cloth on the slab at the end, and he's like doing a ritualistic thing. I was like, oh, it would be kind of perfect, right? If Selma Blair was like needed as like the blood sacrifice for this Cthulhu thing. And that's not really what she was there for. She was just there to like entice Hellboy to stick his arm in the thing, right? And paired with the psych ward where Rasputin goes to visit her, I feel like there was a lot of script left on the cutting room floor where maybe somehow, because she was fire, right? She could summon the power of fire, where she had a bigger part in all of this mythologically than the movie ended up having her, I thought.
The way I see it is that Rasputin's whole endgame thing is get Hellboy to Russia and unleash Cthulhu and all that. But he knew that Hellboy wasn't just gonna do it, so he needed kind of that pawn that he could sacrifice to get Hellboy to make the wrong move, and that's what he ends up doing. So I think that's why he kind of brings Selma back into play. That's how I saw it, at least.
It just seems very convoluted. Just like
forever.
And you said this movie isn't. And you said this movie wasn't complicated. Come on, David.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know, more scene, like less Nazis, more Hellboy. Is my platform.
Here's how we can solve it without taking away from Matthew's beloved Nazi scene. Okay. Is that
whoa! I don't know about. This is what it feels like to be Dean on my podcast now. I don't know about no beloved Nazi scene.
But instead of showing like a young Selma Blair setting fire to all of her classmates, replace that scene with like maybe a few years ago Selma Blair, setting fire to a bunch of people in a cafe or something,
or both. Yeah, just have both, right?
Just a lot of Selma Blair.
Well, no, I like the young girl scene. That like is actually really cool. It's really well done. Just the way that she's like fucking on fire, like help me as she's walking to this children. Like somebody help me. They're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is great.
But yeah, a scene where it just shows her losing it around Hellboy, right? So we get a picture of what happened there instead of them just being. She's like. Because, like, we don't even know what their relationship was. He's obviously in love with her, and it feels like she was in love with him at some point, but, like, we don't really know, right?
They smoochy the smoochy. Come on. Get with it.
That's right.
I don't know what any of that fucking meant.
That was in the script. I read it before we got on.
He's fireproof, dude. She could go all out on him, and he would be A-okay with it,
Probably enjoy it, right?
They called her Fire Crotch.
So I next want to talk about how there we go. Well, it's Blue Fire though. So I next want to talk about how Myers wants to quit because Hellboy won't let him go talk to Selma Blair. He's like, "That's it, I'm out of here."
And like the dialogue between them walking in the park, Selma Blair and Myers like walking in the park, and he's like, "That's why he was mad at me. He thought you and I. Wait, do you?" And I was just like, oh my.
That's at the end. That's not in the park.
No, in the park where.
They do it again at the end.
They do it again at the end.
Walking through the tunnels, and he's like, are we a thing? Maybe? No?
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I don't. So when they're in the park, like, and this was like an issue I had where I was just like, I don't understand if he is actually hitting on her. Because it doesn't make sense. Because he knows from the get-go. Maybe I'd have to watch it back, but I'm pretty confident we know that he knows that Hellboy loves Selma Blair, or he fucking should, because everyone else around there knows. And so he should know. And so to ask this dude who could kill you, who you're also supposed to be working with, to ask his girl out on a date. And like the whole thing didn't feel like a date. And I thought they were just setting up like a misunderstanding. And then he puts his arm around her. I was like, okay, I guess it is. But I was like, but then not really. And then later on, when they're in the tunnel, he's like, "Oh, he thought that? Well, I don't know what is happening between us." And she's just like, "Oh my god."
Selma Blair delivers the best line in the whole movie. He asks, "Are we a thing?" And she goes, "You really want to talk about this now?" He goes, "Yeah." And she goes, "Red, white, or whatever. Men are all the same." And I was like, "Amen."
Fantastic
sister.
line. Fantastic line.
Truth. I did want to say, so Myers eventually goes to Selma Blair, like after she burns down the hospital, and is like, "Oh, come on home." And she has this line where she's like 60% of women are named Liz, and I was like, that number seems high.
I thought that too. And then he's
I don't
like,
think
"Well,
that's
I'm
true."
John," and I was like, "I mean, that might be 60%, but not Liz.
Elizabeth, Liz. Yeah,
Liz,
I
I
don't.
mean, that's got to be, I don't know, 2%. I don't know. There's a lot of names.
Yeah, you
It's
look at the
common, but not that. You know,
It's not
maybe in the
that. No.
Hellboy universe, there's just Elizabeth on every birth certificate. 60% of them, at least. Maybe it's a
That's
Hellboy
what.
thing.
Yeah, that's what you can think of it. It's like in this multiverse of like in the universe that Hellboy lives in, like
Mhm.
everyone's just named Liz.
It's just a lot of Elizabeth.
The scene where all this is happening, but at the same time Hellboy's on the roof talking to the little kid. I love that. And like
I love
it's very much like when Hellboy rescues that basket of kittens in the subway too, right?
Yep.
He's such a gruff, tough character, but when he does this kind of like these kind of scenes, you just kind of fall in love with him more.
I would have loved for Myers to like sacrifice him in the end and die. And then Tom Manning's like, well, you need somebody. Did Tom Manning die?
No,
Yeah, he did. Where was he?
I don't know. He didn't die. Clay died, which was sad. I thought that was really sad.
Clay died way earlier. But anyway, my point is Myers should have died. And then Tom Manning's like, oh, you need someone to take care of you. And he's like, what about that little kid on the rooftop? I'll just take that kid. He gets
just
me.
take that kid. Yeah.
It just takes him.
The mom
Come
can
with
come
me.
and visit.
Yeah. I mean, Hellboy, this one, and I'm sure we'll talk about his death later, but this one is kind of about losing a father and growing up because of it, because Hellboy's out being jealous when he could have been back at BRPD to save his dad. And that kind of forces him to grow up. And then Hellboy 2, minor spoilers, revealed very on in the movie that Fire Lady is pregnant. And so that movie is kind of about the fear of becoming a father. And then Hellboy 3 didn't happen. But it would have been about, I've heard, being a father. So I really like that like thematicism of this trilogy. Maybe you could put The Shape of Water in there. Maybe you can put
As a
that in there
prequel?
somewhere. But like losing a father, becoming a father, being a father. I think that would have been incredible.
I love that because now I'm imagining where a world where Hellboy 3 was made, and at the end of the movie, he's like, I'm not Hellboy anymore. I'm Hellman. You're Hellboy. And talks to his son.
Or if he said hell dad.
I'm Hell Daddy now.
Oh, daddy.
Yeah, we haven't-
I don't like that universe, actually. Now I'm glad that movie was canceled. So, thanks.
Who's your hell daddy?
Your hell daddy.
We've only mentioned Clay once, but I do like the continued like, does his hair look fake? Like throughout the movie, and then he dies. Very
He
sad.
dies. Rest in peace.
Yep.
Biggest RIP.
Robot guy kills him. He kills him and then like turns himself off. Although you know what, we actually don't know if Clay did not die.
Oh shit, you're right.
We never-
right.
Tom's like, yeah, 2 agents died, and Clay will probably not survive the night. But we never get confirmation that he
We
died.
never get confirmation. That's true.
Because it wasn't important enough, or the guy's like, just don't tell him I died. Maybe I'll come back for 2. Who knows?
And maybe they forgot. So,
He did get stabbed like 50 something times. So there's that.
It seems like he might have lived, though. Who knows?
he might be all right. We don't know.
Maybe
We don't
his hair implant saved him. So yeah, then we have that gross scene at the autopsy that we were talking about earlier. Comes awake and then kills the dad. And then I guess, if you read the comics or you know anything about Hellboy, every iteration his father has to die. That's just
Yeah. It's
that's
Uncle
just
Ben.
that. It's Uncle Ben. So then Hellboy, becomes Spider-Man, and
Mhm.
then we kind of have like gathering of the troops, and we wanna finally kill the bad guy. They take Selma Blair. You have this like underground tunnel maze, and now you have like the really good Tom Manning like pairing up with Hellboy
Mhm.
and Selma Blair pairing up with John, and you got that.
You know what? One thing I did
Yeah.
want to say first, like it is like a the way they get them to Russia doesn't really matter. But one thing I thought was odd is that Rasputin's like having this very kind of like jovial talk with Broom before he's going to kill him, and then he's like, "Don't worry, this won't hurt at all." And then he kills him very like he has the robot just kill him very quickly, right? And it's like, why is he
Mhm.
being so? Why is Rasputin being so nice? Like, is he? He's
Good
not the bad
guy.
guy. Yeah.
Maybe Rasputin doesn't know that Broom is the one to like mess up his plans way back in 1940s.
No, he does because he's like, if you had killed him 69 years ago, none of this would have happened. So he knows.
Oh, yeah, then I don't know why he's so nice. I mean, would you be that nice to a guy who condemned you for like 60 years?
Was 69 the right? When did this start? It was like what 41 or what was
I
it?
think they say it's like the Nazis' final push, so it's got to be like end of World War II.
45, 44?
Yeah, I was going to guess 44.
It says Scotland 1944 is when the movie opens up, and then I wrote down.
Hey,
I wrote down that he says like 69 years. If you would let him die 69 years ago, but that math doesn't work out. If this movie took place in 2004, so I must have written it down
Well,
wrong.
the movie came out in 2004, but maybe this didn't take place in 2004. Maybe this took place in the distant future, the year 2000.
2014. Who
let's
knows?
see. 44 plus 6. Yeah, 2013.
2013.
It doesn't make sense that they would
That's
have been like
funny.
the year the 2014. But either
Yeah,
way,
that's a random.
but yeah, we're in Russia. Once again, I already said I really liked when he brings the skeleton back alive. The skeleton's got like
Mhm.
a bunch of comic relief lines until he gets re-killed by the fucking swinging thing.
Like a pendulum.
Yeah, I was waiting for that guy to come back, but he just doesn't, and I don't know why. I thought they'd just find him on the ground somewhere, and he'd be like, "Ah, screw you, Hellboy, for doing that." But he's just gone. He dies. I like that.
Yeah.
If I could go back to the funeral scene of the dad, I love that. Like the scene of Hellboy just watching the whole thing from above and the
Yeah.
rain coming down on him. I thought that was gorgeously shot, and it really like emphasized the makeup because I just watched it and I was like, man, you should be just like Ron Perlman with red coming off your face right now. But it looks fantastic.
It does.
I don't think there's more like of a graphic novel shot than that funeral shot of just very comic book. It was very good.
I love that.
It had me thinking, we were saying that Manning has such a switch of a character all of a sudden, right? And in the beginning, he got onto Hellboy because he felt like the lives of those soldiers were on Hellboy's head, right?
Yep.
But then with the pendulum, where he refused or he wanted to go back, and he kind of like told the soldier to stay there, and then the pendulum killed the soldier. Maybe in that moment he thought, "Oh shit, that life is on my head. All right, Hellboy, we're cool now. If you don't mention this to anyone."
Yep. Your turn.
Yeah, I don't know. Things their relationship got solved very quickly. And from here on, this is kind of like, I'll bring it up now. The point I was going to make earlier about the ending is it feels like Hellboy is never in danger of losing to these people. Like, he kills the robot guy very easily. Myers takes out Ilsa. She's like supposed to be immortal now. He stabs Rasputin with his horn, which unleashes a god. And then he kills the god by like getting swallowed with bombs and exploding. Like, he never feels like he's in danger of losing.
You're not really supposed to fear Hellboy losing. And I think in the comic books that's apparent too. You're supposed to fear that Hellboy turns bad and kills the whole world. Right? Matt, I think that's kind
Yeah,
of like
yeah.
the thing is that, yeah, Hellboy's OP, but he's supposed to be overpowered. It's the fact that you're supposed to fear that he turns evil. If he stays good, that's the thing you're rooting for, not that he
Mhm.
lives.
It's kind of his Hellboy comics, and the movie does it well too. It's kind of um denying fate, denying destiny, and choosing your own path. That kind of story. And the movie does it well. Where you're right, I don't think you are supposed to be like, oh no, Rasputin's going to beat up Hellboy. It's, oh no, Hellboy is going to join up with him and unleash hell on Earth. But he doesn't, so that's good. We love
Yeah.
him for it.
It also seems like if he had just said, "Yeah, I'll do it," then the chains get taken off, and then he can just kill Rasputin and grab
I thought
Selma.
that too.
But he says
I thought-
no,
Yeah.
and so then
Yeah.
Rasputin kills her, and then he's like, "All right, well now I have to do it."
Oh, I like the occult stuff in this movie. I like uber religious equals mysticism. The one thing I could not get behind was this lock has your name inscribed into it, so you cannot break it. That's all
Yeah.
it took. Like,
Yeah.
like if I wrote your name on a pair of handcuffs, or that's it. Okay.
It's actually worse than that. The only way to break it is he had to say his own name, and then it would come
You had to
off.
say is yeah. It's like your phone's thumb password.
But then I
I-
guess that makes his horns grow out and turns him into like. It feels like it almost brings his true self out to where he can't like
Mhm.
make the choice to not open the gates of hell.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But
And I like the
you know,
line by John Hurt when Rasputin says, like, "Do you want to know your son's name?" And he's like, "I know his name. It's my son." I like that.
So what I wanted to say earlier is that you have like God mode Hellboy, you have his horns growing out, and then you have his fire crown, which is just badass. Like,
So cool.
but it's like the pinnacle of evil, right? It's like this is the version of Hellboy that you don't want released onto the planet. But honestly, it's the version I constantly want to see on screen. I want to see
Yeah.
big horns and the fucking fire crown, and I want him to wield a sword that is way too big for him to wield. Like, I like that Hellboy.
Mhm.
So I'm very sad in every iteration of the movie, and he tears off his horns. You know.
Yep.
I
Yep.
really want to see those foul.
I mean,
horns
you
the
should
whole
love
time.
the new one then, because you get a bit more of it, you know?
Yeah, but the writing is so bad.
But at what cost? At what cost do we get more?
So bad. You know the cheetah werewolf guy in the new one where he's like,
Yeah.
I hate monsters because when I was in Burma with Bruce Wayne's father, I was killed, or my whole troop was killed by a monster. And then the Alice is like, so why do you hate monsters again? And I'm like, oh my god, like this movie sucks.
It's bad. It's bad.
So we skipped over Selma Blair killing all of the Samuels with her firepower, right? She's like tells Myers to slap her,
Yeah.
and then she's like, "You need to fucking run." Like, so it would have been cool if she like started to be able to control it. Maybe that happens in 2. I don't know. And
Is
then
Selma Blair even into?
She is.
haven't seen.
Yep.
Oh,
haven't
okay.
seen it. And then he kills the god at the end, and I do love the very end where they kiss, and I like his lines of like he basically just sort of wakes her up, and she's like, "What did you do?" He's like, "I told the people that have you that if they didn't let you go, I was coming in there, and they don't want that." And then the kiss in the end.
That's so
And
badass. I love that
assumed
line.
I
A
thought
lot,
there was going to
yeah.
be more after that, but then it just ended. And I was like, "That's a very good job. That's a great place to end it."
Yeah, Guillermo del Toro is a talented filmmaker. The thing about
Hot take.
hot take. Ooh,
Hot
spicy,
take.
hot take. The thing about that is that at moments where this film is all out Sin City, and it's Ron Perlman in Sin City, just with the Hellboy makeup on, is probably the best. Like the film at its best when it is noir Sin City. But my favorite line from Hellboy a little bit before this is where he goes, "How big could it be?" And, and then the tentacle comes out, wraps around him, and takes him back. It's like,
Yeah.
awesome. Love it.
Yeah. I like that they add that little boss fight at the end. It feels very much like we had little budget left. Let's make this little boss fight thing happen here.
Where it makes no sense. So Rasputin was always Cthulhu, or like he had to die to become Cthulhu, or
He had
like
a
the portal's
God
closed.
in him? Yeah.
He had a god in him? I don't know.
It's so freaky when you see like his forehead ripple and stuff. That always creeped me out. And his hand. That body horror type stuff. But yeah, I don't know.
That's another thing. That's another thing with this movie. It's like Guillermo del Toro is great at like monster movies, right? So this is like the perfect background for him. But then he mixes this noir detective element into it. And then he mixes like Lovecraftian elements into it. It's really like it's a bunch of genres that you normally wouldn't think that goes well together, but this does a very good job of mixing all this together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the end it goes straight up like cosmic horror for a moment with like the eclipse, and you see the tentacles all coming down. I'm like, wow, this is Lovecraftian stuff.
Yeah.
And this was Guillermo del Toro's, like, maybe, I think in this point in time he was still getting his footage with like, or not his footage, his footing with big budget studio type movies. And I think that this one and Hellboy 2 is a lot of experimentation with it. And I think that's why I like Hellboy 2 more, because it feels more comfortable making it while still, and I think it was given a higher budget and stuff too. So he's able to do more crazy things while still maintaining the feel of this is just a master of monster movie type guy doing this.
Well, what's crazy too is that Pan's Labyrinth came out 2 years after this, and I think that's what just like really put him on the map. Everyone's like, Pan's Labyrinth, we all know it. And then I think then they go back and they're like, oh shit, that same guy did Hellboy? I didn't know that. Like, it's like that catch up where like a director does something like really infamous, and then all of a sudden his earlier works become more and more noticed.
But yeah, I think Pan's Labyrinth is the first time I had heard of him. And then you find out that he had done Blade 2, which he did with Ron Perlman, and he wanted Ron Perlman for this. And so, it does
great
like sort
casting.
You sort of like go back and like, oh shit, the guy that did Pan's Labyrinth did this. Then, you know what I mean? I heard Quentin Tarantino was talking about the movie Dunkirk. And he's like, there's a lot of stuff in that. If it had been done by like a less known filmmaker, it probably wouldn't have worked for me. But because I trust Christopher Nolan, it works for me because I know it's being done for a purpose. It's not just being done, right? And so that's kind of similar here. Like, what Guillermo del Toro is capable of. So when you go back and something doesn't make sense to you, you're like, well, I'm just probably not thinking of it right. Like, he probably had a purpose behind this until he's like, nah, not really.
He's too smart. I'm the dumb one.
Yeah, it's me. I just read something which is really funny because this whole time, so Abe is played by Doug Jones, who also plays the fish monster in Shape of Water, but it's voiced by David Hyde Pierce, who is most famously Frasier's brother on the show Frasier. And I was like, the whole time, I was like, that's fucking David Hyde Pierce's voice. I was like, why does it not have on IMDb, why does it just say Doug Jones? I was like, I know that's whose voice that is. And it's like David Hyde Pierce didn't want to take credit for it because he didn't want to take away from like the acting. But I was like, just threw me off so much the whole time I was watching this movie. And now it's explained.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Is cool.
That's cool. You want to hear even more crazy casting, which will make you want to watch Hellboy 2?
I think I'm going to watch it tonight, honestly.
Go for it.
Seth MacFarlane. Seth MacFarlane plays like another sidekick friend.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
That's actually really funny. I just read that the studio, so Guillermo del Toro had to convince them to put Ron Perlman as Hellboy, and the studio wanted Vin Diesel, which I honestly, I would have watched probably, but like not for good reasons.
At
No,
the end,
no,
at the end, he's just like, Dad, no, Dad. And Myers is like, what's like, come on, Hellboy, we gotta move on. He goes, but family.
You were just like literally
Family.
that whole time. I was like, you're just gonna make a fucking family joke.
Family joke. Of course I am. Of course I am.
It
Which
would have
ties in
really
with-
brought the whole like Hell Daddy thing full circle, you know?
You know what? That actually is not a bad casting. Is Vin Diesel as Hellboy and John Myers as Paul Walker? I would watch that. That's good.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed talking about it probably as much as I enjoyed watching it. I did like it, as much as I thought that I had problems with it, but overall, like, it is an enjoyable movie. There are like parts of it that really do work, and it's like I do now want to watch Golden Army. I guess since Matthew, that's the one you were thinking of anyway. Maybe that one's like a ton better too. So like I probably will enjoy it.
I think it's a bit more fun.
I think it is to compare it to Spider-Man of the same kind of year. I think the Raimi trilogy and this have a lot of parallels where this is pretty basic standard ground, and then the sequel is what really just like pumped it up to me.
Let me ask you something.
I highly recommend the second one.
Let me ask you something, Matthew. When is the last
what's up?
time, besides this time, that you last watched Hellboy?
The original?
Well, like before this viewing to talk about it on the podcast. When's the last time you watched it?
Oh man, probably no sooner than like 8 years, maybe 10.
Okay, perfect. All right, so it's been a while. So my question is that after all these years, does it hold up watching it now?
I think so. There are moments like that fight scene in the train with Samuel where I'm like watching that CG model switch to a guy in a suit, and it's just kind of like a mummy guy swinging his arms around and whacking at Hellboy.
Yeah.
There are moments like that, but I think overall, I think the story holds up, and the makeup is really impressive still. And it is a bygone era of directors and filmmaking, of just practicality that I miss in a lot of big budget superhero movies today. So yeah, I'd say it holds up.
I agree. Well, Matthew, thanks for coming on and talking about Hellboy with us. Can you give the listeners how they can find you, how they can reach you, and how they can listen to Justice League Mortal?
Yeah, you can find my movie podcast, Dial Up Movie Club, each month. Me and two buddies, we have a theme. We recommend movies together. We just did a sci-fi month. So if you like movies like Alien, Spaceballs, Demolition Man, you're going to love that. Justice League Mortal, my 4-part audio drama based off the canceled George Miller film, is also over there. You can find me on Twitter at Hopper2400 and at Club Dial for Dial Up Movie Club on Twitter. And just look me up anywhere else if you want to find me. Matthew Dawson. You'll find me somehow.
And I think what we didn't mention is you play Aquaman.
I do play
Mortal.
Aquaman. Yes.
So
Thank you for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched.
I'm Milan.
And I'm David, and today I finally watched Hellboy.